I mean, 2.5 hours straight plus now a podcast is definitely a new thing. Haven't done that before. I'll let you know when we're live. I think we are going live now. Believe we are live.
Great.
Just let me double check the quality, and we've got everybody. Stream is healthy. People are here. People are joining. It'll probably take a while for people to move off the old stream and come here. I'm not sure what kind of a crossover rate we're going to get, but here we are.
Great.
Right on, man. I've been looking forward to this one. This is, yeah, it's one of those it's one of those things that is so easy to forget about, so easy to not do or to do poorly, that honestly, I haven't put as much time into it as, cause I've never been like a very large account rep where I just had that like 4 customers that I managed. And so my experience here, like I've certainly closed large deals, like $1 million deals, but they tended to be either the start of the relationship and then I'd pass them off to somebody that would do account planning, or just maybe I wasn't very good at it and I never really did this. But yeah, so thanks for joining us here. And if you're listening on the podcast and you're wondering, why is this guy taking so long to get to the intro? It's because we're streaming this one live on YouTube. We're doing that every Thursday on our YouTube channel, live at 10:30 Pacific. So if you're listening on the podcast and you want to come and interact with the guests, then make sure you hit us up on YouTube next time. If you are listening, get ready for that intro. Here we go. Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Collin Stewart, and today I'm joined by Greg Callahan. This is a strange one in his relationship in that he is working for a startup, but they are a part of Bain Consulting. So they have oodles of money. They've got a pretty cool product. But today we are talking about account planning, and not just account planning, the importance of it. Greg's got some pretty cool research that he and the team have done. And that's really what we're going to be talking about. And they have a tool, and I'm going to put him through his paces and make him cold call us at the end. But we're not talking about the tool today. We are talking about why we should be doing account planning and how to do it properly. And so if you're not doing account planning, you are leaving money on the table. We're going to give you some really actionable tips on how you do this well. So if you're in chat, let me know what are some of the things you're hoping to get out of our conversation today. But with that, I'll pass it back to Greg. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey man, been looking forward to this. Long time listener, first time joining. So this is great.
Cool. I mean, we always talk about, like within predictable revenue, we always talk about landing big accounts. But I think one thing you could argue is that, we don't spend enough time talking about how to do the expanding part. Everybody sort of accepts, oh, land and expand. But without a clear and concise strategy, you're kind of just, winging a prayer. So talk to me about why we should be thinking about, or why account planning is important to do in the first place.
Absolutely. And I think it really comes down to where are the numbers. And so when we work with a lot of our clients and in our own portfolios themselves, the reality is that the most of your revenue that you're going to generate is coming from that top 20 to 30% of your accounts, which you can probably count as less than 100 for many folks, maybe a little bit more than that. But if that's where the money is and that's where where the spend is, well, go get more of that. That's the reality. Just go get more of that money. So that's where we really focus is, okay, you go get it. How do you go get it? Build your strategy to go get it and get after it.
And I mean, in fairness, like every salesperson knows that the number one place to go get new customers is or to go get new revenue, if you got to make quota this quarter, is to go to your existing customers. So like, this is nothing new. How is this different?
Yeah, I think a little bit the word account planning is sometimes a dirty word as you talk to people in the field and you spend time in the life of trying to bag. The last thing you want to do is sit down and write down some monstrous account plan on what you're going to do and stuff it in your top drawer and never look at it again. Mm-hmm. I think as we step back and look at it, there are a couple things. One, if you're doing account planning right, you are going to put more money in your pocket. That's just fundamentally true. The very best account reps and AEs are doing account planning, and they're doing it and they're generating revenue off of it. And so we have some data we can certainly flash up here and talk about it, but it's worth it, man. If you get it right, you're gonna be singing all the way to the bank every week.
Very cool. And so what is it that you guys do differently? Because I know we're talking about sort of being a little bit proactive and this and that, but so you talk to me about what's new, what's different.
So there are a couple things that are different. I think the first one is we're all living in this world where we're really good at nailing our funnel. And so we have stage one opportunities come in, you prosecute through that funnel, you get them out the door. And so we do a really good job with what we have, but we don't always spend the time stimulating that demand, particularly in the accounts that you own. And so coming back to those top 100 odd accounts that you're working on, what we typically find, and the constant story is you go to big sales summits with all your best customers and they walk out the door and they shake your hand and go, man, I didn't know you did that. And you got to get rid of that. That's the way you're going to generate new revenue. So what we're talking about is not rocket science, and I'm happy to share through this process what the questions are and the approaches that we do. But fundamentally, the way we think about it is it's above the funnel. So go run a series of plays to introduce your customers to your products that have no revenue tied to it. You have a wing and a prayer, you're going in, but you have something pretty unique to talk about that has an ROI story for that client, and keep doing that over and over and over again. And I promise you it'll turn into revenue.
Very cool. Very cool. I did want to address the sort of, I kind of called you out for being an entrepreneur, but working for a big company. So what's the deal with that? Because you are kind of cheating.
Yeah, you could say it. The simple answer is I'm with Bain and Company. It's a broad global consulting firm. But what we've spent over the last—
You might have heard of them before.
Over the last 40 odd years we've been around, account planning is something that's been around forever, but we've never actually taken the time to say, let's take our methodology and digitize it. We spend so much time with our clients, giving it away, showing them how to do it, taking them through the motions and teaching them what to do it. And the last moment of handoff is, here's your PowerPoint or Word document. And so we said, enough's enough. We partnered up with some of our friends at the CRM firms and said, okay, we're going to put our methodology to work, and we're going to make it so that when I fill it out in my own CRM system, the last thing I want to do is go into a PowerPoint doc. So put it in the CRM. And so that's coming out of that was born Coro. So it's kind of the best of Bain thinking brought into a digital new age.
Cool. And then, so we're going to put that on the shelf, and we're going to come back to Coro and when we do the cold call role play. But getting into the methodology, because you said it came from, these are the things that I learned. And so talk to me about how you think about account planning.
So there are a couple things that jump out about account planning, and maybe I'd start with just what do we know to be true? Mm-hmm. And so we know a few things to be true based on our data. And Collin, I'm happy to flip it up here if that's helpful for our listeners, or we can send it around afterwards. Up to you. But one, everyone kind of knows the right questions. When we look at really high growth companies and low growth companies, what's different between them? Everyone knows what the questions are to ask. What is different is that the really high growth businesses, the separation is one, they really go out and mine their best practices. So I bet everyone out there has a few sales reps that just crush it. They have great accounts, they deliver every single year, and they do the same thing over and over again. You ask them, hey, what are you doing? What's magic? What's the science? And they say, I just do my job. Like, I roll out of bed, I put on my pants like everyone else, but then I sell deals. And so what best in class folks are doing, what best in class companies are doing is they're mining what those top performers are doing, and they're actually building them into standard approaches. We call them sales plays, but conceptually they define who is the target. Is it by industry? Is it by product line? Is it by penetration play? So what is it? What is the ROI story that they're telling the clients that is different, and the hook that they keep getting them going? And then what are the broad examples that you can bring to bear? And it's that simple, but 9 times out of 10, people don't know about the big deal wins. But if you do know a big deal win, what do you actually say in the meeting? And so it's making that super simple. So part one of difference is best practice mining and making it super simple. And then the second part is actually just doing the process. So putting it in a simple place and then continually going back to it. You look like a guy who does fitness. I mean, if you want to work out, you want to get fit, you got to work out. You don't work out every 10th Tuesday and assume that you can go run a marathon in a few weeks. Like, you got to do it. So being strategic about those accounts and coming up with new ideas that you and your manager and whoever if you have any specialists or overlays that you have in an organization, bring those groups in. It's all about that collaboration piece. So those are the big differences. Everyone knows the questions. It's really about the process you put around it.
And you're totally right. And it's not specific to account planning. Like I was talking to a friend of mine who's got a company the other day, and they're a chat app, and they're like, we were talking about this one feature, and I'm like, well, they're like, we're just not seeing adoption. I'm like, well, that's one of those ones that you're not going to get adoption unless the organization builds process around it, and the senior management team decides to reinforce that. Right.
Yeah.
And so no matter what you do, and this is why we're not talking software today, is because we want to talk about these are the best practices so we can convince you that you need to do something about this. You need to build this into your process. You need to somehow find a way to work this into what it is that you're doing. Because without that, there's no magical software app that can make you follow best practices.
Yeah, that is it. I'd love to say there's a software app, and I'd love to tell you that ours is the one, but it does come down to just putting in the work. That's it.
But ours is the one.
Totally. Call me later.
Yeah, exactly. So you said you had some data that you could walk us through. Why don't you show us that?
Yeah, certainly. So I gotta flip you up and share some screens. So here we go. So the first one, coming back to that first statement I made, red bars are really high growth companies. So we did a research of 200 odd different companies just to get a better understanding of what was going on. And we defined where are you relative to best practice. And then we separated out high growth companies and low growth companies. So we know where you are, how you're performing, and then how you're performing on these account planning specific capabilities. And so what we looked for is where's the spread between the red bar, the high growth, and the gray bar, the low growth. On the left-hand side, everyone knows accountability and needs assessments and feedback. Truthfully, everyone sucks at simplicity. I can't tell you how many 100-page account plans I've come across that are utterly useless. But
Totally.
where you see the largest gaps between red and gray and between the high growth and low growth, it's all about subject matter, overlays, specialists, best practice mining, really harnessing the power. And then separately, getting it built into your CRM. If it's not in your CRM, if it's not mobile first, if it's not easy to access, like the last thing someone's going to do at like 9 o'clock at night when they're shutting down their day is like, man, I got to get back into that PowerPoint or Word document and make sure I've kept myself accountable for all the stuff I did. So that's what's different. I think the other piece I'll throw up here is one more piece of data is it puts money in your pocket. This is a little bit of the carrot, but again, on the left-hand side is high growth reps. So red bars are reps that did 125% of quota for 3 years running. It's no mistake. They keep doing it. And the gray bar is underperformers. And it's just like working out or getting ready for a marathon. If you keep doing consistently, thinking about strategy, it's going to make a difference. And for the right-hand side is companies overall. So the left-hand side is reps. Right-hand side is companies overall. And high growth businesses do it 2 times more than everyone else. And I think the question you'd put, which is the right one, is how do you make sure people do that? You know, if you're a manager, just ask your team about it during your one-on-ones. If you're a regional leader or a CEO or an executive of a high growth business, you know, the simplest way to do it is I worked with an executive once who randomly pulled 3 account plans every month and reviewed it with the executive.
Yeah.
And he just wanted to show how important it was to him, and that it really worked. It with the fear of not knowing what it was, that was a big deal.
That would be a big one. I mean, it's hilarious way to do it. But if you're not showing that it's important, if you're not putting the work in to say, hey, this is something that we're going to enforce, that we're going to do as an organization, this is something that's important to us, then there's no point in trying to buy a piece of software or spend any money on anything.
Right. Totally. I literally just got off the phone with another group, and the same concept. They're like, man, we need to do account planning, but we got to figure out what we actually want to do first. Are we committed to it? Like if there's no commitment, then it's not worth putting yourself through the paces. So you got to kind of believe.
Then, you know, and it's top of mind because I just got I did a talk at our Own Your Growth summit last week, and on the predictable revenue methodology. And what struck me was the number of companies that just wanted to dip their toes in the water. They wanted to pay some money to test something out, but if you don't fully commit to the methodology into being great at it, then it's very hard to get long-term value out of it. And what I mean by that is like we were able to book meetings, but because the organization, the senior team wasn't aligned in saying this is a key important thrust for the company, the executive team was skeptical. The sales team or the sales development team was booking these meetings, and the AE team had no motivation to do anything with them. And so they're getting on the calls and they're saying, oh, well, they're not like the inbound meetings. I don't like them. It's more work. So nothing happened. And then, the customer calls is like, hey, we're going to cancel because we didn't get any value. And it's like, well, you didn't we did our part in like delivering our element of this equation, but you guys weren't bought in. And I don't say this because I'm trying to put the blame on the customers, and like there's obviously things that we can do better, and there's the onus is on the provider to do this. But if you're not going to commit on a project, on a key thrust from an executive level, and then pursue that as an organization of like, we're going to build our company around this, we're going to build how we do this into our organization, there's really no point in doing anything.
I mean, just put some further data around that. We get the question a lot. Should I do Challenger? Should I do Spin? Like, what methodology should I do? Which one's going to be the high growth?
Sandler.
Yeah. You go through the whole group. The simple answer is, if you look at every single methodology and you look at who's you rank them high growth to low growth, and you look at how many are outperforming, there's literally no difference. But when you look at the difference between the high growth businesses and the low growth businesses, their commitment to a methodology is what stands out between a high growth and low growth. So I don't care what religion you are, you just got to have religion. Mm-hmm. That's it. You got to pick a methodology and believe in it. And that's really where you get the magic.
Beautiful. And so speaking of the account planning religion, how do you get that right?
Sure. You got it, man. So I'll throw something up here again real quick. So 4 things. You got to pick the right accounts. You got to have a really clear cadence. You got to have the right actions. So you got to have some real stimulation of demand, something to talk about. And you got to have the right tools. So I'll maybe pick these apart one by one. And then I think it would be fun to actually go into an actual account plan. I can share literally the questions we ask and how we work through it.
That'd be awesome.
The right accounts, 50% of the time people are pointed up in the wrong direction. So again, we're talking about your top 100 accounts. A lot of times we walk in and people are saying, I'm building these amazing account plans in this account that and I'm getting no value. And you look and you go, well, you're 100% penetrated in this account. There is no more value to go get. Like, why would you waste your time here? And so focusing on the accounts that you can actually create a step change in value over that 12 to 24 months. And we think about an absolute value. So some are going up, and you got some accounts that are at high risk and high churn rate. And that's also an account that you should be thinking about account planning on. But it's really about defining which accounts, whether it be for cross-sell reasons or upsell reasons or further penetration reasons, and a new sale for that matter. What are the accounts that you want to go deliver on? Mm-hmm. The next one is cadence. Hopefully many of the listeners here are doing it, but hopefully everyone has a one-on-one with their team, whether it be weekly or bi-weekly, but you're using time to coach up your team. And it's not the inspection of the pipe per se. It's actually, hey, what's going on in your pipe? What are the good opportunities you got to go do? How can we collaborate and coach together to get better? But carving out a piece of that one-on-one time to actually talk about stuff that's really further out in the pipe. I shouldn't even say pipe. That's an ambition you'd like to go sell them someday, but you haven't actually created the opportunity. There's no dollars associated with it. But what's that new thing? And so, to your point, the product you brought up earlier, are you going in and talking about the new feature and functionality that they haven't used yet or they don't know about? Or are you talking about a new product line that you're coming to market that could be really cool for them to use? So you don't need to buy it yet, but I just want you to know what's coming down the pipe, or giving them access to something that's new, or sharing actually a best practice, or bringing, we see a lot of value in actually bringing your best accounts and customers together. The amount of ideas and ways they figure out how to use your product more effectively when they're sitting in the room together and best practice sharing, that's just such an amazing opportunity. And so that using that, and so that goes right into the actions, which is, can you come up with some way to create interest in your account? You're going to get a lot of no's, but you really need to bring these ideas to them. And you're trying to get rid of that, hey, I didn't know you did that. And that's at the end of that. I mean, there's a large software tech company that just rolled out a brand new platform. I'm not going to name any names. And I can't tell you how many times I've been through an overview of that product on every single call I've been on with someone from that company. And they do a really good job making sure so that the next time this idea comes up, I know who I'm going to call. It doesn't matter where or when, but they do a really good job making sure they plant ideas in my mind of where they can be really valuable. Mm-hmm. So they're always top of mind when these things come up.
It's so critical. It's and you kind of alluded to it. You're not necessarily going to create an opportunity for these things, but you need to sort of be like planting the seeds of these crops that are going to grow into potential opportunities at different time horizons and for different reasons.
Yeah, that's it. And I think to your point, you can't, as much as you love your MQLs coming in, your SQLs coming in, you got this great engine that's producing stuff. Like you can't only rely on that. Mm-hmm. And that's truthfully for a lot of your existing customers, that's not the way you're going to get them to buy more. But you can actually, what's really powerful is the ones who do this really well is they stimulate the idea and then they put them on an account-based marketing campaign. And so they put the pieces together and they say, this is not my marketing engine driving stuff and my sales engine driving stuff. It's actually, I want to go sell you XYZ widget and I'm going to introduce the idea to you and you were pretty interested. Mm-hmm. And the moment I get back, I say, this was an interested party. I put them on a drip campaign and all of a sudden, everything they see for the next 10 weeks is only the stuff that I just talked to them about. And so bringing those two pieces, the folks that really get it right are the ones that can bring all these pieces together and say, okay, I've orchestrated my machine to really make a difference in the mind of this individual.
And you're totally right. We're moving beyond sort of just sales, and now we're into like this whole revenue orchestration idea where, you're the conductor and we're saying, okay, you're going to go off and play that song and then you're going to take this part and you're going to take this part and you got all these different parts of the organization. But in the eyes of the customer, it's all sort of working in concert together, as opposed to them being on 6 different lists, 3 different SDRs from different geos, and then they visit the site and they get all this different messaging. It's just like, it's the difference between just, I guess, static that doesn't make any sense and like, one of Beethoven's, his, I don't know, I'm drawing a blank on like the number, the 9th.
A 9th, the 12th, 14th. Knows if you went the
9th is a good one.
One other very tangible example here is that there was a tech company we work with, and they had solutions and collaboration and a whole bunch of kind of traditional stuff, networking, and they're moving into security. But none of their clients knew they had security. They just built it out. They were kind of testing out these new platforms, mm-hmm. and they were getting no traction, very little traction. Because they hadn't, the CISO wasn't going to pick up the phone for a phone call from them. Mm-hmm. And so what they did is they actually said, okay, we're going to do a different approach. We're going to look at our client base and we're going to figure out which ones are really good targets for this security thing. And so we're going to lay those all out. And then we're going to actually, our team doesn't really know how to ask security questions. So they laid out 10 simple questions, which was, hey, do you know what the number of risk incidents you have currently right now? And so they asked the folks that they did know in the organization those 10 questions. So they picked the accounts, they made sure their core team asked those 10 questions, and they came back and ranked them. And they brought in their security specialists for the ones that they knew were pretty interesting and got that CISO meeting. But in the interim, they started running all these campaigns, marketing campaigns on security and the value of security and are you secure, blah, blah, blah. And it all would point back to them at the end of the day. And the amount of lift they had in their pipeline was, it was so small to start, but it was like 100x what they had done just from those focused campaigns. As you think about just no revenue, no nothing. But from that, those were the seeds they planted in a very structured way.
That's really cool. And the one thing that you sort of, that's, I think, rebounding in my mind now is like, it doesn't really matter what you do or what methodology you adopt, as long as you're applying it consistently. And so, like you said, and yeah, I looked at this and I was like, oh, I could take this same slide and I could just replace account planning with sales development because it's right accounts, right
Yeah.
cadence, right actions, the right tools. I might put different, emphasis here and there, but you're totally right. And so I think we were kind of drilling into. We talked a little bit about the right actions, the right tools. Is this just a plug for the tool, or you were, are you
Too
talking
far
about
left. The first,
orchestration?
no, I think the first one is super simple, which is this is not a process by which everyone in your company gets to ask questions. So finance doesn't get a question in your account plan. Marketing, you pick your ops doesn't get a question. This is a super streamlined, structured way to get you from what are the needs to what can I go do about it. And anything that gets in the way, you need to eliminate. And so simple, 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 simple. And then you saw from the best practices, make it digital. Don't overcomplicate it. I might throw up one more thing here, Collin, is that in the right accounts here, how people get it wrong. If you're calling 100 to 200 accounts and you're smiling and dialing, account planning is not for you. It's territory planning. It's something else. So I'm talking to the groups that are looking at, you have maximum 50, but 5 to 10 are going to make or break your year, and you really got to drive those. This is where account planning really makes a difference. You don't want to build an account plan on 100 accounts. You don't want to build it on 50 or 20. You want to do it on what would be great is 5. At 10, maybe if you're getting to 10, you're just writing down what is the play that you want to go run. I want to run these 3 plays this year, and that's all you do on the back of a napkin. But the more you do, the less effective it's going to be, and it's just going to become another pipeline, if you will.
I gotcha. So if we're thinking about the steps, it's sort of like stage 0 is the right accounts, right? Like if we're looking at the playbook and you're not going after the right accounts, you may as well. You may, like, if you're doing all this, everything downstream, all your activity downstream, all your effort is for naught. And then it's sort of the plan, the plays, and the timing, like the cadence of it.
You nailed it. And I'd say most people get the accounts right. It's easy to get the plan right. It's hard. You gotta have the right question. You gotta be simple, but that's right. Where people miss the most, and when you kind of do your own self-assessment in the mirror, it's you either aren't driving consistency with the cadence, you're not actually making your plays easy and simple enough for your team to just pick up and go.
Gotcha. Talk to me about the consistency thing. How frequently should we be doing account plans? Like, if I've got 50 accounts, am I doing one a month? Am I doing 10 a month, one a week?
If I were to look at the year, you're looking at 50 account plans. Hopefully, by that number, you're looking at 5 to 10 are going to really make or break your year. I'd say you're writing one a plan at 5. Let's do 5. You're refreshing your plays every 3 to 4 months. You've run something, you tried it out, so for example, you ran your security play. You had a whole bunch of meetings, you went through that whole process, and that took you 3 to 5 months. And now you go back to the drawing board and say, did it yield something? Did it not? What am I going to do? And maybe you run 1 or 2 of them, but it's when you run out of your plays and you're done with your plays, it's time to load back up on what that next demand stimulation is. So we typically see, every 6 months, just take a quick look. And it's not, when we look at the plan, 90% of it you've already written. The ambition of the client, the key stakeholders, the competitive environment, that's not really going to change. But what we want you to be focused in on is, every 6 months, you should be coming up with new ideas to bring to your clients. If you're not, hopefully it's every 3, not every 12. So to answer your question, no more than 10 accounts. You should sit down and write it once a year, but then you should be just checking back in a really simple and easy way every quarter. And you should be reviewing it with your manager and pulling people. You're actively engaging in it. It's not like you write it, you don't have to do anything. You check a box in 3 months. Hopefully you've done something.
Interesting. This is kind of fun for me because I've never been that like, I've got 50 accounts and I'm just going to work those 50 accounts. I've never been in that sales role. It's one of the few that I haven't been involved in. So it's really interesting to see like, this is kind of, in some ways, this is the big leagues, right? You're working for, a software company that has a few letters in the name kind of thing. And
Yeah.
they might be capitals, they might not be. I don't know.
Pick your company. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know you could be referring to anybody, but you would have like your named accounts, right? And some people like, if we're talking about dollar value for sales, like for the total value of the sale and possibly and potentially for the compensation of the account exec or the sales executive or however whatever that role is, this is probably some of the upper echelon of sales. And if we're looking strictly from dealing with the biggest accounts, closing the biggest deals, making the biggest commissions, like I've got friends and they're making significant amount of
More
money,
than we make. That's for sure.
and they've got one account, and it's a state or a province or a city or or like one of the biggest banks, and they're just working that single account, and they're doing this account planning process. And so for me, it's just interesting to get a little bit more insight into. I know how to do all of the tactics. It's sort of like I can play guitar, but I've never played jazz guitar before. And you got to learn different chords and different solo techniques and things like that. You're going to build the melodies a little bit differently, and you're still playing guitar, but it's just a different rhythm, which is very, very different than if you're playing any other
Yeah.
style.
And what you said is spot on. And I guess what's interesting is we see actually a lot of value in this. Even the really, really big shops, yes, they're so big, they need methodology and approach and that kind of stuff. But we see we spend a lot of time with kind of, lower mid-market, mid-sized businesses, whether they're venture backed or private equity backed. They probably have one product and they have one on the way that they're trying to do, or they have different personas they're selling into within the organization, or they really haven't. We see a lot of times where you sell to one location, but you have to actually hustle to get it into the rest of the true expand of land and expand.
Totally.
And so this focused approach of just sitting down and saying, what is it going to take to expand, whether it be any of those things we just rattled off, I'm here in Boston. I'm a big Patriots fan. That probably turns half your audience off right now. But Bill Belichick walks in every week with a plan, and he's really good tactician. And so it provides so much more structure as you walk into the week or the month or the quarter to say, I know where I'm going to get my value. I know how I'm going to get my value, and I know what's the stuff I got working in this thing that I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to make next year as well. I'm going to crush next year.
Cool. We got a question from the comments here. Mickio is asking is interested in the volume of accounts per rep. So you had suggested sort of 50, but I think so. Yeah, I'd open up to you. What are your thoughts here?
So just generally how many accounts a rep should have, or just how many sales plays, or take it any which way I want?
Yeah, I mean, I think the accounts per rep question is hard to answer categorically and say definitively it doesn't matter what company you have, like what type of company, what type of sale. It's impossible to give that number. It's sort of like how long is a piece of string. But I'm curious how you would think about determining the right number of accounts per rep. So like walk me through your process for, if this, then that equals number of accounts.
I think we typically start with kind of how, like you do with velocity, which is how much do you need to put in your pipe? How big does your pipe need to be? And what's your target close rate to get you to the target dollars you need to deliver per quarter? And then what can my business support from an actual investment perspective? And so, what's kind of interesting and kind of fun about my job is I get to see lots and lots of sales organizations, and the commission rate on one company, because it's super low margin, is very different in the size of if you have a 1% margin business and you do $100 billion, there are not that many of those. And I'm not saying I work with them, but conceptually, that is going to be a very different commission rate than something that's like 90% margin dollars. And so as you think about accounts and the dollar amount, what we typically work with is like, how much can you afford? What does a rep need to do? And is that actually reasonable? And that's a really big piece of the puzzle. Can a rep deliver on what you're looking for? And then you just start to tier out the accounts. And I think the one lesson that has just been, I've seen over and over and over and over and over again, is that a lot of people they get to a certain size and they say, you know what, I've really taken my rep size down, I mean, the number of accounts in my reps portfolio down. There may be at 50 or 25. And like, I just can't imagine a world where I'd get them to less than that. There's going to be just massive revolt. And the reality is when you get to that point, actually going deeper yields more value. And I worked at a small company way back in the day, and we started with 25 reps. Everyone had 2 states, and then we got to 50 reps, and everyone had a state, and then we got to 100 reps, and we split the state in half. And yet every single time we grew our portfolio, and everyone had fewer and fewer accounts. And the same concept here is, you know, when you go deeper into a place, you find out there's this huge cavern underneath, and then you can go deeper yet still. And so I'd say, as simple answer is, use your back of the envelope math, figure out what you need to do, figure out your pipe and sales cycle and that kind of stuff, and then tier out your coverage based on accounts and size and whatnot.
Awesome. I'm curious. So some ranges that you've seen, it could be, and like I've been in that in your shoes, and I've seen that a number of times, where you go from like total blue ocean, any rep can have anything, to like you shrink down, and it just comes down to like where the rep spends their focus. And to answer Mick's question, and to paraphrase what Greg was saying, is it's coming down to the ROI that you can get, right? Like, can you spend, you know, 100% of a super senior, you know, account exec's time on this account, and if they focus on just these 5 accounts, can they produce enough value to produce enough of an upside so it's profitable? And it just comes down to like, how much time is it going to take, how many dollars can they output, and how like what are you spending on the rep? And he's got a follow-up question here, and also, how are you prioritizing? And like, what works best when you're trying to prioritize these accounts? So I'm assuming what they're asking is like, when you go, say you are a rep that has 50 accounts, how do you pick those top 5 to build an account plan for?
Totally. And since we're all work from home, my printer's probably about to go off. So give me a second here while there we go. So how do you prioritize? I think the simple answer is based on account potential. And so I'm sure, Niccolo, if you're out there, you probably know what the full potential, what your very best accounts are, and you know it either by spend per number of headcount that person has, or by resources, or by whatever. But you know generally, you know, that ratio of how much they can spend relative to that. Or for those in the SaaS world, number of seats, and you're doing it number of seats per month or whatever. And so I would think very tactically about where is the largest potential for you to go spend, and then you overlay. So there's kind of size and then likelihood to win. And so if there are accounts out there where you stand no chance, or where you don't have the right product, and so in the world of accounts, I'd kind of plot them out in your mind on almost like a grid or a 2x2, and say, which ones have the highest potential and I have the likelihood to win, and that's where I'm going to spend all my time, and where I'm going to build my account plans. And the ones that are either smaller or have less potential or are never going to be with me, I'm going to spend a lot less time on those. And so it's really just thinking about size and is it a good use of your time?
The one thing that you mentioned earlier, just kind of casually, was also the ones that are potentially at risk of churning, that you really want to get your hooks in and solidify your relationship. Because, you know, while upselling is super important, churn reduction could be an equally beneficial outcome.
Totally. And a lot of companies, that's the easiest way to grow revenue. You know, if you have a massively leaky bucket, if you can just make it leak less,
yeah,
it makes growing a lot easier.
It's funny. It's one of those abstract comments or abstract ideas that is like really, like, the whole idea of the leaky bucket is easy to visualize. But the idea of, if you have a 5% monthly churn rate or a 10% monthly churn rate, you're replacing all of your customers every year. And so if you imagine the bucket with a very big hole, every year, 100% of that bucket is drained, or 120% of that bucket is drained. So just to keep that bucket full, whatever your annual goal is, you need 120 or whatever that annual number is. Say it's $10 million. Like, you need to have 120% of that cover, or 120% coverage. I'm hoping my math is correct here. I've been doing a lot of content back to back to back.
I'm with you, man.
I'm following.
You got a
Okay.
portfolio, it declines by 10%, and you got to grow 5. So you got to make 15% up every year. But if you only decline by 2, then all you got to do is 7%. And that's half the amount of effort.
Yeah.
And so that's a big stinking deal.
And on the opposite end of the spectrum, if it is 10% monthly, right?
Yeah.
That's the example I was using. You've got to replace 100% of your customers or 120% of your customers every year. There's a theoretical maximum, because you can only close so many customers, and your cost to acquire a customer is gonna, as you close more and more and more, your cost to acquire is going to gradually increase as you run out of profitable customer acquisition channels, or you start to see diminishing returns from each of those channels. So even if you've activated every single channel, there is an eventual spot where that diminishes, which means there's a theoretical maximum. There's a glass ceiling on your business if you don't get your churn rate under control.
There's the funny example. A couple of years ago, when they came out with the thing, the little bumper thing you put on the back of your car, and everyone was going nuts. Wow, the sky's the limit. Think about the number of cars in the U.S. or the planet, and like how many little bumper things we can put on the back of these things, and this massive market. And it turns out the theoretical maximum was only people who live in the city. And so the expectation was here, and the actual value you could deliver was way down here. So being super clear about what market you're in and what your value is really important piece of the puzzle.
Beautiful. I want to direct us to and push us to sort of talking a little bit tactics now.
Yeah.
I'm curious on can you show me what an account plan looks like? Because
Sure.
if I'm a rep that's sitting here going, okay, well, maybe I do have these named accounts, or maybe I am one of those greenfield reps, but I still want to do this. And, this is not a strength in my organization. I want to cherry pick some advice from here. Show me what good looks like. And we're going to talk about, if you're listening and saying, hey, why should I continue listening? We're going to get Greg to show me what an account plan looks like. How do we build a sales play, and how do we build a relationship play? Then I'm going to torture him with a cold call role play, which will be really fun and evil. So show me what an account plan looks like.
Sure. So I might, just so we don't scroll through Word document real quick, I'm going to just give you a roadmap of what we're going to look at, and then we'll jump in. So as we think about account plans, there are 5 parts, at least for us. First one is ambition. What are the needs of the stakeholders? The second one is, who are the competitors? What's your relative share of wallet? And then what offerings matter to them based on that? The third one is, who are the people that matter in the account? And then at the bottom here, 4 and 5 are plays. And so as you kind of visualize yourself walking through this process, part 2 here around who are the competitors and what are the offerings translate directly into products that I want to go pitch, and kind of plays I want to run around product. And the power base, and so who are the people that matter, directly translate into relationships I want to go build. And so it's just, that's the whole point. The 1, 2, 3 is really setting the baseline of who matters, what do I need to be doing, what's going on in the account. And we talked about earlier how a lot of this you don't need to refresh every month. Like 1, 2, and 3 really shouldn't refresh. I mean, you look at it every year, but it shouldn't be a ton of work. 4 and 5 is where you really start to see the value start pumping. That's where the sales and relationship plays are. So I'll jump over into an actual plan here. So give me a second, and I'll pull it up. All right, cool. View, full screen. All right.
I like how your hands are voice activated. You have to tell your fingers what to do.
Exactly.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's with my kids too. It's just, move here. Yeah, anyway. So you're going to see the 5 parts, the ambition, the insights, the power base, and the plays. I've laid out all the questions. The reality is most of these are just stimulus to actually write down your thoughts. And so for us, the first one around the objectives, it's 2 questions, but write 1 response, which is, what are the priorities over the next 6 to 24 months? And then secondly, what are the objectives, both the financial and qualitative objectives of your buyer? And so I think what you're going to get out of this, Colin, and you're going to tell me this later, is like, dude, this is not rocket science. And that's right. It's not. The whole point, everyone knows the right questions to ask. It's actually the methodology and the approach that you do with it. But for us, what we spend a lot of time on, and this is we use for every industry and every size, every capability, if you're penetrating new accounts or upselling others, is this first question you have one response to. So what's going on and why, what matters to them? Put yourself in their shoes. What's success for them at the end of the year, irrespective of whatever your product is? And then the second question is, are there any changes that could create a step change in our business? And so is there an executive moving? Are they thinking about a new platform, which is going to push us out? Are they doing something that we should be aware of? Is there something we can capitalize on? But like at 10,000 feet, what's on the minds of my buyer? And then what's going on within the company that's going to change that I should be aware of? Super duper simple. Write it down in prose, get your bullets down. And that's something you're just going to check in on once a year. Hopefully it doesn't change that frequently. The insights piece is where you start to get into the numbers and the hard stuff to say, what am I doing? And so we always actually start with, what's the share of wallet? And we encourage everyone to think about it on a product basis. And so I'm going to guess 90% of the audience here, it doesn't actually know what the share wallet is on a product basis. They maybe know what it on a company basis is, but definitely not on a share wallet basis. And that's okay. That's legitimately okay. I encourage you to put your very best wild ass guess on the page and say, based on this product, I think we have 10% share or 90% share, because pushing yourself to put that on a page then starts to illuminate for you, hey, if I'm 90% share wallet and I'm spending all my time banging my head against this solution, wow, there's probably greener pastures for me to go on in this account or in my next account. But really push yourself to say, do I think I have all the value? The next one is,
and I like how you're kind of framing that in terms of like, it's not like us versus a competitor. It's what are the non-direct competitors, like what are the indirect competitors that are taking up, so like if I'm selling copiers, like how much are they spending on hammer and chisels, sort of idea. What are they spending on chalk, right? It's all like, it's the job to be done. So I like that. It's a great way of sort of zooming out, because it's so easy to get like really fixed and I guess deep into the details of the account because you see it every day. And this is a great opportunity on a regular basis to kind of pull yourself out of the sort of 40 foot view and to the 10,000 foot view.
You got it.
Cool.
And then same thing on the competitive intensity. So the next piece is, okay, well, now we know kind of where we are, what the opportunities are, like what's the competitive landscape? Does anyone really have a stranglehold? Does anyone, who's growing in share, who's losing in share? And what we typically see is this is a really unique opportunity for folks to say, okay, I know this competitor is weak, or they're not doing as well, or we've got this like awesome way to like outflank them in every way, shape, and form. And just putting yourself back down and taking a step back and saying, get out of the mundane jockeying every single day. I'm going to pull up all of my customers that have competitor X, and I'm going to go target all of those customers. And I'm going to do a really focused campaign on just how we are relative to them and what it is to switch to us. And then lastly, if you've thought about where the opportunity is, competitive landscape is, just put your thoughts down on page of kind of why would they want to buy you? Like, what's the product? Don't overthink it, because you're going to actually put down your plan in the play section. Like, just put it down, commit to, of all of our solutions or all the things we want to do, these are like the 2 or 3 products I want to push on, or the solution that I want to bring together.
Gotcha.
I'd encourage everyone, financials, every executive ever wants financials in their account plan. I will say it here once and probably never again. It is the greatest waste of time for a salesperson to try and find the exact right financials. So if you were to not do something on this, I would encourage you not to do the financials. It's just it doesn't really truly lead to any strategic insights if you've done 1, 2, and 3.
Take that.
Yeah, there you go. Love it.
You did.
I would be tarred and feathered if I didn't have it in there, but I
Fair.
give the same story to everyone I talk to.
For those that are just listening, wondering why these guys are laughing maniacally, I'm on Zoom and I just went and annotated and put a strike through his financials section. Um, so we talk about the ambitions, and that isn't changing too much. And then we look at the insights, and this is where we're probably starting to update a little bit more on a quarterly basis. What comes next?
You got it. And so next is just that power base. And so you can decide what you need to know, but fundamentally, you don't need to put every single one of your contacts in your power base. That's not the objective here. The objective is, what is the priority of your contacts? And then spend the time to think about what is their decision right. There are tons of different things. There's ABCDE, there's budget and influencer, there's rapids, there's races. Whatever your company uses, use that. But try to really think about who's the priority, what decision right do they have around your buying power, and then do they like you or do they not like you? Are they a promoter or a detractor?
Yep.
Those are the things that are going to matter. And what I'd encourage you to do is, we're really good at putting people on the page that like us or we know well. What we're really bad at doing is saying, well, Tommy over there or Jill over there or whomever, I don't know them, but they certainly control a lot of budget, but I'm not going to talk about them right now because they're not a priority for me. Like, actually, the whole point of this session is to say, well, we got to go get to Jill because we want to get to her pocket of money. And so let's put her on the page as a high priority, zero relationship, no idea what she's doing. And now let's go build some relationship plays off of that. And so don't overthink this section, other than you don't need to make it beautiful. You don't need to make it pretty. You don't need to draw, massive hierarchies. Who are the people that matter? Who've got decision rights? And who are the people that you don't have relationships with that we need to go build?
Very cool. Okay, I like it. It's so funny. I've used Salesforce so frequently, and there are those like other stakeholders, or you can attach contacts to an account, but I very rarely go in and I add this level of detail, and let alone review it on a regular basis. Now, I guess my context is I wasn't one of these account managers, like large, strategic account managers, but yeah, super interesting way of looking at things for sure.
Yeah. And then the last piece here, I lump them all together on plays. And I think that the approach you take about it is, it's kind of the same, but what are the 2 to 4 plays that you want to run, or the 1 to 3 relationship plays? All in, you want to be running, you want to have 3 things on the page here at any given time. And they're in different levels of completion. But conceptually, what is the product or solution you're offering? Why would the customer be interested? What are the actions? So this is typically a play. We talked about earlier, we talked about the security play. Mm-hmm. There were 5 or 6 steps associated with that. You got to define the customers. You got to have the Q&A session. You got to get connected with your security specialist. You got to launch your marketing campaign. So there are 5 or 6 steps. Put them down and put a date for yourself. That I know for me personally, I have tons of lists around here because that's the only way I know I get my day done. Mm-hmm. Like, put down that list. Say when you're going to commit to it, and say who owns it. The bigger the team, as you can imagine, those 3-letter word software companies we're talking about, you can have 50 odd folks on an account, and that accountability piece is going to be really important. Of who owns it and when's it due, and we're going to hold you accountable to that. And then last but not least, like what internal resources do you need? Do you need a specialist? Do you need a finance person? Are you doing some kind of financing thing where you need to do something creative? Like, think about what's the toolkit you want to bring, and who do you need to get to make this thing successful? Mm-hmm. And so, as you can imagine, you're going through all this, and then all of a sudden you start to pull these things together. And if you're doing it inside of Salesforce, whatever digital tool you're using, you can actually start to create records that say, okay, I'm running against these products. I need these specialists. I want to hold these dates accountable. Did it turn into actual pipeline? So I can start to provide feedback to my team of, if you run these sales plays, 8 out of 10 times it turns into pipe, and 5 out of 10 times it turns into wins. And so everyone needs to go run this sales play. Mm-hmm. And so right now it's a static world in which it's really important. And so a lot of people just do it in the static way, but the power, and why best in class gets continually better, is they're mining this to actually build new ideas to bring to their sales team to make their jobs even easier.
I like that. And I love the public accountability piece. In addition to you're creating milestones so that you know it's got to happen this by this. It's bringing you back to like, I'm committing publicly to, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to run these plays, and I'm going to, make this, and I'm going to make this happen. And these are the critical steps to get from point A to point B.
You got it, man.
All right. So if we're looking at sort of the sales plays, let's have a look at the relationship plays. Because like you said, when you look at that, I'm assuming you're looking at this power base, like as you alluded to, and said, okay, well, we know this person really well. We know Jane really well, but we don't know Joe very well at all. And Joe seems to have, a bit of power. And then there's this Sarah person. We don't really understand what their role is. And so how do we, I guess my first question is, when I look at relationship plays, how do we prioritize who we're going to be going after? And going after, when we're talking about people, just sounds really creepy. I retract that. How do we determine who we prioritize first?
You got it, man. I think the simple answer is, who has the spend that you want to go get? And that might be longer dated than the actual sales play you want to run. Because I got to get to Sally to create a relationship in order to run a sales play. And so I almost think about it as, these are the people who either are pre-sales play or going to be really important influencers in whatever deals or things you've got going on. Gotcha. And I think as we're all in the world of COVID, it's forced us all to rethink, what does it mean to have a relationship or build a relationship with someone. So before, there's event-based marketing where you go do something together, or you take them to sports games, or you have large events. A lot of events were an endearing term of hug and chug. You go to a bar, you kind of chug beers together and you hug it out. Mm-hmm. What I'd encourage you to do is be a little bit more creative and a little bit more strategic. And so, I made mention to kind of one of the most successful relationship plays out there, which is, hey, I know you've got this problem you're working through. I've got another client that just literally went through that thing 12 months ago. Would you like to get their best practices and learn a bit more? And I have never met an executive who's like, nah, like I totally got I'm good. Like, I don't want to know from me. Sure. They don't want to hear from me, but someone else who's been through it, who's been in their shoes and knows what they're doing and can give them an idea, that's gold. And so starting to think through ways of how you can really give something that feels valuable and builds both credibility and all that. I mean, there's that thing, the trust equation out there. I can't remember the exact thing, but as you think through that trust equation, you're trying to give something in that relationship play that builds that trust up.
I've said it myself internally, and I've heard a lot of account execs say it. Is like, I don't have anything valuable to add. And you've got this internal dialogue of like, oh, they're the CEO. Like, how can? And I'm a lowly salesperson. How can I add value? I would, and this is coming from my own internal self-talk. And it's gone now. But like,
that's great.
In case you were curious, I'm an overconfident jerk now, as opposed to, when I started off. But I think it's just a point worth highlighting, is that the power of the network is exceptionally powerful, especially when we're talking about account plans. And when you get to that really senior level where there aren't a great deal of other people in a similar situation. And so if you're able to connect somebody with like, hey, I see you're struggling with this. Let me introduce you to, like, no strings attached. Let me just introduce you to somebody else that's solved this problem already.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a tremendous value there.
The two other ones that executives love is voice of my people. So if you happen to if you know the team, what's going on, they're far enough away, they don't really know what's going on. If you can come in and say, like, here's the things that are going on in your company, and here's, I'm not going to even sell you anything. I just want to tell you some things that I'm seeing that would be, if I were you, I would want to know. That's a really good one. So voice of the people or voice of the front line. And then the other one that people like is voice of the competition. So, hey, I actually was talking to someone else, or I see what your competition is doing, and this is broadly how they're winning. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Those three things, people, oh yeah, a peer, competition, or my frontline people. Those are things I'll stop and listen to.
Beer, competition, people, or my own people. Those are the only three things that work. You heard it here first.
The only. My bad. I'll retract the only.
Yeah.
Just
So
awesome.
I love those like as the categories of like the types of plays. So how do I design this over the long run, and how does it fit into the account plan?
Certainly. So, I think first things first is if you're, no matter the size of your organization, you can start this tomorrow and just say, everyone figure out your own sales plays or your own relationship plays. You don't have to have a super structured program to make this work. And
Mm-hmm.
for you as an individual, if you're one AE sitting out there trying to get some ideas, like just take the plan and start doing it. It's going to be worth your time. If you're sitting out there and you're a manager, or you're in the ops team, the rev ops team, or if you're a head of revenue and you're trying to think through, or you're marketing and trying to think through how can you be valuable, it's actually going and getting the voice of your top performers and actually codifying those plays. And by codifying, it's not just deal wins. It's literally, what is the point of view deck or the proposal deck or the hook materials? What's the pre-populated email off the shelf that says, hey, XYZ person, we've seen so much stuff in your industry do this. And so it's a pre-written email or it's a pre-written deck. I strongly encourage you to think about, we all really shy away from ROI, but like fundamentally, is there an ROI you can talk, even if it's just broad strokes of, hey, a customer who did this saw this type of return. That's meaningful. And so the more you can kind of put those things together, so that when your team is standing in front of the room, they don't have to pull it all together themselves. They actually have a story that they can tell. It's compelling, it's interesting, and it's a lot easier to do. And coming back to velocity of plays, if you're a single person, you have to come up with plays every single quarter because you're churning through them. That's why we stop. It can be overwhelming. And so the more you can make this easier for your team, and actually people are coming in and celebrating this play delivered, and you can get those evangelists talking about that stuff. That's how you start to build the machine. And if worse comes to worse, and you're the executive, you can randomly pull account plans and read them if you want. But hopefully it doesn't come to that.
I love how we're finishing with, we kind of went through what an account plan looks like. We talked a little bit about what the sales plays and the relationship plays look like, but you're totally right. This is not something that a solo rep can do, or at least a super rep could do this for a short period of time, but eventually you're going to fall down if there's no support. And so I'm curious, what are the other ways that if an organization wants to adopt this sort of account plan methodology, how do they need to support or what do they need to do to support their organization? And don't go software. Don't go your software. We'll get to yours very shortly, because I know you're going to say, buy some of my software. You sneaky guy.
And that's the easy one. That's the easy one. That's guaranteed results. Sorry, give me 1 second. It appears that the entire house has shown up and they're blasting music in the background. So
that's okay. That's okay.
Quick text to family. Hopefully you don't hear it all.
No problem.
The simple thing is coming back to those 4 basics. What can you do to build the plan? It's help people figure out what the accounts are. Then it's second of help them with the cadence, help them know what those one-on-ones should look like. I mean, I've got laminated pages here of exactly what does your meeting schedule look like, and how do you make sure you do it consistently. And then it comes down to easier plays, and then making it super, super simple for people to actually do this frequently, so you can create accountability and buy-in through that process.
Perfect. I think that's such a great place to transition to the cold call. Because as we've alluded to a couple of times, Greg works for Bain, but he's got this cool startup within there. So we're going to admit that he's cheating. We're giving him a tough time about it, just because it's fun. And I'm mean. And speaking of me being mean, let's get to the cold call. So I promised you an opportunity to share the product and share a little bit about it with the audience. So talk to me about, before we get into the cold call, what's the persona that you're typically assuming you would be cold calling in to try and sell Coral?
Yep.
Who would you be calling into?
It's typically either the head of rev ops or a senior sales leader who's kind of struggling. Like, 9 times out of 10 they might be struggling, but you may call someone who says, I got that covered. I'm good to go. But that's typically the person who's looking and evaluating and buying.
Perfect. Overconfident sales leader hat. On.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Making it easy on me.
And we'll do the new school calling in that I'm not going to actually pick up my banana phone. I'll just like answer on my headphones here. So we'll do ring ring, and then we're going to get good to go. Ring ring. Hi, this is Colin.
Hey, Colin, this is Greg from the core team. How are you, man?
Good. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm actually calling because I want to talk to you about your accounts and more specifically how you're doing with your top accounts and how you're expanding and growing those accounts. Dead silence. Love it.
Just gonna make this really awkward. Okay, let's. I'll be less mean. What do you mean by top accounts?
The ones that are really delivering the value for your organization. Typically when we work with organizations and the way our tool works is we're really driving growth in those top accounts. And what we typically see is you typically increase accounts by 4 to 5 times your pipeline. And that translates to 30 to 40% account growth in those targeted accounts. And it really comes down to account planning, man. So as you think about your team, I'd love to get a better understanding of how do you have a methodology or an approach to make sure that you're expanding in those largest accounts?
Oh yeah, we're a Sandler shop. We've got about 25 accounts, and they're all separated by geo.
Just 25. That's impressive. So all of those accounts are really delivering a lot of value for you.
Oh, sorry, 25 reps. Reps.
25 reps. I was gonna say that's pretty unique.
Yeah.
25 reps. That's a better story. As you think about those reps, are all of your reps really getting to the full potential of the accounts that they have in their portfolio?
Oh, of course. Every rep is 150% quota.
150% of quota. That's incredible, man. So you're telling me they're delivering a lot of value, but I'm asking you a separate question, which is, are you maximizing the value of the accounts that you have?
Yeah, and I was being a bit sarcastic there. We've got a couple people that are hitting quota, but the rest are, it's up and down. It's inconsistent.
That's interesting. And do you find they're pretty good at actually driving once they have a deal? Are they driving it to close, or is it really that they don't have enough stuff coming in? They haven't actually stimulated demand in those accounts.
Yeah, probably a variety. Some do and some don't.
Interesting. And so I think what I'd love to spend some time talking about is one, our overall approach, which is pretty different, which is all about how do you actually go out and stimulate the demand. And so we have this proprietary approach around sales plays and how do you think about it? And then secondarily, I'd really want to spend a lot of time with you on actually how do you actually bring that value to fruition? So how do you take the opportunity to introduce new products and then bring that into your pipeline and then ultimately close? And we have a really unique set of software that helps you do that. But I don't want you to buy the software because you want to buy the software. What I want to tell you is it's backed by 40 years of Bain. We've been doing this forever. And what we do is we deliver results. And so when you buy a platform from the Coral platform, it's built on our unique proprietary approach. It's 100% integrated into your CRM platform. And most importantly, because we've designed it from the front line back, it just reinforces all those best practice behaviors of collaboration across your team, driving consistency and repeatability. And so I'd love to schedule some more time with you to actually take you through our approach and more importantly, the tool and how you can get more value out of those accounts.
Cool. We use a tool called Voltage CRM. Do you integrate with them?
They sound terrific, and we have the flexibility to spend as much time as you want, man. But
don't look it up.
For you, I'll make it happen.
That was the first company I started. It was terrible. We only had one customer. It was a CRM system, but that was awesome, Greg. Thank you so much for stretching with or for doing that with us. I don't imagine you're cold calling too frequently.
Did it show? No, no. This was a lot of fun, man, and it is. Just to put it simply, I'd encourage everyone who's listening to really think hard about account planning. You're welcome to leverage our approach. We're sharing it with you on the website and just to check it out. If you really do want to grab some time and talk about how do you actually digitize it, it's not rocket science. So you could build it all on your own. I think the thing that makes tools differentiated is how do you actually lens it from how does the rep get value, how does the manager get value, and then ultimately how does the ops get value? And so how do you get all those things and actually use it to drive differentiated results, get repeatability and results and all that stuff that comes out of it.
Awesome, very cool. If people want to get in touch, if they're looking for some orchestration software, or if they just want to, get in touch, pick your brain, what's the best way for them to reach you?
The link at the bottom, I assume there's some blinking link. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
There's a link at the bottom to check it out. Just go on the webpage, fill out the love to learn more, and I personally will get right back to you and help you out however I can.
Awesome. Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, man. It was a lot of fun.
Right on. And thanks to everybody that joined us live. That was super fun. Just a reminder, we do this every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific on our YouTube channel. Just look us up, Predictable Revenue. If you are watching live, don't forget to hit subscribe. If you're listening to this on the podcast and you want to get a notification, you can jump in there and hit that subscribe button. And it'll tell you when and where we're going to show up. And we're just going to magically appear on your phone. It'll be delivering sales value like crazy. So make sure you hit that button if you want that. Anyway, thanks again, YouTube, for joining us in the chat and asking questions. And Greg, thanks so much for joining us. It was really good to get a chance to pick your brain, man. This is fun.
Thanks, man. A lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Right on, dude. See ya.